Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining our webinar. My name is Julie Moon. I'm Senior Research Analyst with Finovate, and I get to be your host for the next hour or so. We're going to be talking about mastering personalization, the key to elevating customer experiences in financial services. Today, I'd like to welcome Shane Klosser, Head of Industry and General Manager for Financial Services at Yext, and Steve Ramirez, Advisor Financial Services at Yext. Now, personalization is a topic that's been around for a few years now, but it's also a topic that has been evolving rapidly over the past few years. We've seen changes in consumer preferences, as well as regulatory evolution and new developments in enabling technology. And all of this makes it very difficult to know how to approach personalization in a way that best suits your organization, as well as your customers. So today I'm eager to hear from Shane and Steve on their insights. I'd like to get a bit of housekeeping out of the way. We are going to be doing a Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. So if you have any questions that come up during the presentation, you can send them to us using the Ask a Question module on your screen. And we'll try to cover as many as we can during the Q&A session at the end. But if we do run out of time to address your question, Shane and Steve can address the questions via email. Just make sure that you have submitted your email address in the form. Finally, we'll be live tweeting or live Xing. I'm not sure how you say it these days, but we'll be live tweeting this webinar, and you can join the conversation on X using the hashtag #FinovateWebinar. With that, I'd like to kick things over to Shane and Steve. Take it away, guys.
Great. Thank you, Julie. So everybody, Shane Klosser, Head of Industry here at Yext, General Manager. And I'm really delighted to have Steve today. So Steve, maybe you could just do a real quick introduction. Your background is really great with the expertise you have.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Julie. I've been in financial services for 30 years, and specifically the last 20 years I've spent in web and digital marketing. I've worked for some really great organizations like USAA, Discover, KeyBank, and most recently for Citizens. Most of my teams really have focused on driving better customer experiences in the hopes of driving revenue. And in many of the roles have had some success in really personalizing and humanizing experiences, especially some of those online interactions, which are difficult to humanize. So I'm excited to be a part of the webinar. I mean, we're going to focus on some really cool things, and we've got a nice presentation for you guys. And really, I think we're going to talk about the building blocks of personalization, which is a good place to start.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Steve. So today we kind of have the agenda, really kind of giving an overview of personalization. There's several different meanings out there in the industry and different use cases. We'll talk about some of those financial services considerations. We have regulations, we have InfoSec. There's lots of other different technology choices and integrations that we need to do. We really want to make sure you walk away from this session with these use cases that you can go to business and go to executive management on. We're not going to go too deep into the product or too deep technically. Those would be great follow-up sessions that we would love to have with you. So please reach out to us, and we'll leave you with some best-in-class examples that you can really show with a lot of the executive teams to socialize the value and build that kind of business cases. We look for building those growth targets for next year. So as we kind of look at personalization, there's a lot of definitions out there, but we've often heard that every financial services experience is unique or individualized. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? So we have retail clients, we have business banking clients, we have institutional clients, very different kind of experiences, products, offers, FAQs that we want to be able to get to these different audiences. So we'll give you some pragmatic steps around that. And then, a lot of these systems, they were designed a while ago. And so not necessarily with these new customer needs in mind, or this new demographic, or maybe there's been an acquisition and you were originally a retail bank and you acquired kind of a business bank, or you acquired an institutional division. So a lot of things change over time, and we'll talk through some of the steps and considerations that you can have as you approach that. So here we start to look at search and personalization are coming together. And so the level set here is, as we start to have a lot of these best-in-class consumer experiences, they often lead to these financial services experiences. So we've all seen typically around 50 to 70% of the organic traffic is coming from these search engines. And these search engines are able to understand the questions that we have, and oftentimes we'll refer to that intent. And they're able to shape that intent and really kind of give different visual experiences for how they present answers back to us. So here we see, 4 in 5 customers are using search engines. 74% of people, if they have a poor online experience, they feel that represents the capabilities of the firm, the competency of the firm, and that would challenge them to, especially as we start to look at wealth management products and these things where we're taking our livelihood and our wealth and transferring that to a financial services organization. So more things are important these days in that kind of investor and that consumer consideration cycle. The also thing that we've seen is there's a lot of studies out there. This one actually happens to be by Deloitte, but it says, basically financial services organizations using personalization strategies. And really what that means is delivering relevancy, delivering convenience, being able to really kind of meet the customer needs and have that customer-centric kind of view of a strategy, are able to deliver 2x the kind of revenue here. And so, Steve, I'd like to kind of pass this to you. There's just so many different models that we start to see within financial services. I'd love to get some of your experience in the past of how you've kind of approached this and why you've used search and personalization together to excel in delivering these kind of customer experiences.
Yeah, great question. First, on the 74%, I've got a very specific example at a bank I was at, and we were in somebody's home interviewing them and getting information, and this person was very savvy digitally. And she made the comment that if we showed her a website, if that was the website that the bank was using, I would think my money is not safe. So it's really critical that the web experience, of course, in 2023 is second to none. But yeah, for search and personalization, to me, they go hand in hand. And the only way to truly personalize, even at the beginning stage of general, basic personalization, is understanding that search journey. So it could be Google search, could be online and on-site search for your own website. But it is really critical to start to gain those insights from customers and even prospects that are coming to your web experience and finding out what they're looking for. What are they doing? What are they trying to? What's their intent? To what Shane mentioned earlier. So I would say that if you start using those search results and start to build your process, start to build that experience and your personalization based on that data, then I think you put yourself in a really good situation, and that really is the beginning of personalization and a personalization strategy.
Great. Yeah, I think one of the things to kind of leave a lot of different firms out there with is search can really be embedded into any legacy experience, and that's really important, right? So if you have a .com, you're using a CMS site out there, you can integrate search technology very easily into that experience. You could have an authenticated customer experience, online banking, again, very easy to integrate search. Mobile apps as we start to kind of think about online banking and those things, and even workplace. And so workplaces, we have these financial professionals that need to service more customers at scale with high touch. And so technology is a great way to do that. And personalization plus search, they deliver relevancy, they deliver conversions, and again, we get back to that convenience factor. So when we kind of think about personalization, there's a lot of different point of views on what it is, right? And so what we want it to do is really think through, how do we give you some of these kind of crawl, walk, run techniques that you can approach. And so it's really important as we start to kind of look at 2024, the big bang projects that used to take 6 months to a year, that used to cost like $500,000, $5 million. those are kind of gone. And so now it's really about how do you deliver business value, customer value in these kind of 6 to 8 week increments. And each one of these different little items that you see on the screen is something that you can start to do very quickly as we implement that. So here we can start to see, query intent. So you can use really understanding a lot of these questions that are coming from search. We've seen that just by switching some of that search technology from keyword to what we call kind of semantic search, where it can understand the intent of the question, can deliver a 3 to 5x conversion rate, which are pretty big business results. And we've also seen that it gets a 2 to 3x adoption around leveraging search as people feel more comfortable in answering their questions around that. Location search, how do we start to personalize those answers based on the proximity of the individual to those services? It could be financial professionals, branches, ATMs, et cetera. We've seen customer type be a factor. So am I a retail banking client, or am I a SMB client, an institutional client? We have very different experiences that we want to be able to present for the same question, right? And so sometimes this is called contextual based search. We can do a lot of things around devices, browser experiences. Maybe it's visually how we present these answers with the space that we have. And then as we go to this next level here, we start to see kind of like the next level of difficulty. So the first one is very easy to do. We don't need to have a lot of PII information to do that. We don't need to have the sophisticated content strategy. And then we start to introduce, all right, how do we understand a little bit more? We're not needing to know a person's identity, but we actually do need to kind of understand a little things about the background. Maybe some searches they've done recently within the same session, or maybe it's over the last 24 hours. Maybe we start to think about demographics, San Francisco being very different from Texas, and the kinds of products, services, FAQs, or even kind of messages that are important to get out to those communities around events. Maybe there's a storm coming, and we need to make sure that we don't want people on the branches in a broad set of territories. And then we could always get down to these more sophisticated use cases that we talked to, where you need to have a little bit better technical expertise, data quality expertise, life events, micro-segmentation, and the holy grail is always to get to this next best action, next best offer, which is called one-on-one. So, as we start to think about this, Steve, I know one of the things I've talked to you about when we originally kind of looked at implementing search and personalization, you kind of brought up that, hey, a lot of people would come to the sites, they weren't really using search, they were bouncing, they're going to Google, seeing some of the maybe even competitive offers out there. So that was kind of one of the first things you wanted to fix. You wanted to keep them on site, you wanted to keep them on your property, and you wanted to learn the types of questions they have. But I'd love for you to kind of expand upon that. Sure. So how does that align with some of the institutional goals, and how did you build more adoption of these technologies within the enterprise?
Yeah, no, this is a really good topic, and I do love the be brilliant at the basics. It really makes a lot of sense. You've got to remember, this is an owned asset. Your website is an owned asset, so you're not having to pay paid display and other third-party vendors to do marketing for you. So you want to take full advantage of anything that's happening on your own website, on your own mobile app. So when it comes to the basics, it's understanding that traffic, it's understanding the customer type, the segmentation. Are they coming in on a mobile device all the time or half the time? And then there's a lot of demographics data that you could be looking at. But once you start to really understand what's happening, what that traffic, what the intent is, then there's a whole separate part of the process, which is building that infrastructure within your organization. So it's not only the digital marketing team that cares about this, it's the line of business, it's risk and compliance. It is the bankers typically, whether it's a business banker or a wealth manager or a branch manager. Everybody has an interest and really has skin in the game, because that has to do with their sales. So I would argue that when you're creating even a basic personalization strategy, remember, it's not a siloed event. That is a collaborative event, and it is an ongoing process that you need to care and feed. And you should really assign a business owner. If it's a specific line of business, if it's retail, then you have somebody that kind of owns, I use own in quotes, that experience, and then can be the one that's going out and asking bankers for their input and asking different employees across the organization for their input. But many years ago, I can remember where somebody would visit a website, come to our bank website, they couldn't find the answer that they were looking for, and then they would literally go back into Google and try and find the answer, which, and maybe it's, 5 to 10 years ago, this was happening. Banks and companies in general have gotten better at on-site search and the results, but there's still a lot of room for improvement, which is exactly what Shane is talking about on this slide. But we'll talk a little bit more about this on the next slide as well. But I do think getting good at the basics is a great way to start.
Perfect. Yeah, so just to kind of explain the slide, here we kind of see Stacy. Stacy's a medical professional, recently relocated, maybe starting a young family, just starting to build her wealth, but very technology savvy, a little bit self-directed, so likes to do her own research, likes to kind of explore things, and then probably fact check them with the financial professional, but kind of find that fit in it before. And so search is one of the great places to do that within personalization strategies. And what we tried to do here is kind of build this ladder of how do we start to think about things that we can do from a low effort and start to really build some competency, build some success within the organization, and then maybe expand to other capabilities. So you can test and learn, as we like to call it. You don't have to have everything figured out as you start to enter some of these different tactics and strategies. So the first one, we often say, first of all, we need to really think about how do we start to support conversational AI experiences. Those are something over the next few years we're going to see a lot more of. We're going to see conversational experiences happening within search. We'll see them within chat. There's voice networks out there that we need to be able to kind of connect to. And so part of this is starting to understand the intent that we have, whether when we're learning, when we're purchasing. Is it learning intents where I'm trying to understand, what are my options to save for a college education? Is it purchase intent? Actually know what products I want. I'm really looking for, say, a credit card. Is it I'm trying to get support, maybe signing up for online billing, transacts, right? Something went wrong. Maybe I'm reporting fraud. Maybe there's a transaction I want to explore. Maybe I want to purchase something or visiting a branch and those kinds of things. So those are kind of like the step one. Step two is we talked about it. There's surfacing a lot of those kind of personalized experiences for the right branch, the right ATM, the right financial professional, product, events, offers, et cetera, in that local market. Could be some markets you don't offer certain products, so we don't want to show those depending on the state that we're in. It could be that we don't have branches in that state, and we're starting to look at other kinds of information and ways of intersecting that client experience, the call center, et cetera. We have the line of business, and so that, classic retail banking, SMB, institutional, and then we get down to segmentation, or explore versus exploit. What that really means is just working just like Google, where I can go in and I can ask a question, and based on that question, it'll show me the direct answer that I'm looking for. But it'll also start to show me, like Google presents ads, a lot of financial services organizations start to show offers. Those offers could be a next best action, they could be a next best product, right? Really thinking about how we're starting to curate that customer journey. If I'm a customer or not, depending on I'm logged in, we can start to shape some of those answers at 5. Micro segmentation gets down to personas, specific roles that an individual may have. It could be like a life event that we're able to detect and really start to kind of personalize that. And ultimately down to number 7, which is one-on-one personalization, which is what we hear everybody talk about. which is the absolutely most difficult to do because we have to have so many things that we're really good at to do that. So there's definitely a progression, and we recommend building off this progression as kind of a playbook as you start to think about your own strategy. Steve, as you've kind of done some of this in the past, maybe kind of talk to us about some of the use cases that you've implemented within these financial services organizations. You've achieved a lot without even doing some of the advanced stuff, which is really great.
Yeah, well, we wanted to show some of the wins, right, and get funding for more advanced personalization. But what we did is we really took a look at not only lines of business but pre and post authentication. So we kind of segmented the customers versus prospects or visitor experiences, and so one group really managed all post authentication. Anybody that was in digital banking, what was their activity, what was the most common transaction, what was next best. So we really wanted to figure out how to take full advantage of every single login that came to the bank website. And this is multiple banks where we did a very similar effort. But there was also a website and a search strategy, pre-authentication, which we really built and divided out by segment. So we had retail, we had wealth, small business, and then we had commercial and institutional. So each one of those had their own kind of set of intent questions. So much so that we actually, I think, were one of the first people to utilize Yext to break up our on-site search by line of business. And I don't think that had been done before. So if somebody came in looking for a specific product, credit card, whatever it might be, and they were on the small business site, they got results related specifically to the credit card for that line of business. And if it's somebody else on the commercial or consumer website, then they got information in regards to credit cards for personal use. So yeah, there's a lot into, again, setting up the right team structure. I talked about it a second ago, making sure it's an enterprise-wide focus. You have the right players involved. I say that from experience, where the very first time we tried something like this, we thought we kind of knew all the answers, and we were running down the field and we did not have the ball with us. So now we know how critical it is to have somebody that leads it for digital marketing, but also there's a team, or there should be a team representing each either line of business or each functional area that has a stake in this. But I think you said it really well, and a second ago, Shane, where you talked about 1 through 4. Those are the basics, and I think you have the low effort, the crawl, but there's still quite a bit of work that goes into that. Just because it's low effort, there's still a lot that you can do. There's a lot to gain from that, and you can use the results of 1 through 4 to kind of make a recommendation for budget for items 5, 6, and 7. And as you mentioned, number 7 is very difficult to do. But if you can do it well and you can scale that, then you're really going to win, because that's tough to do, but definitely not impossible. But yeah, I think the way that this is structured, it kind of lays out a nice plan for somebody that has an idea in their bank or in their credit union that wants to go and put a personalization strategy together. I think following these steps in this order is a really good playbook.
Great, yeah. And so Steve was talking about how number 3, how he really kind of focused on the line of business. And one of the things that you can do with Yax is you can create a search experience, and that search experience is unique to a line of business. What that gives you the ability to do is that it gives you the ability to really generate a lot of reports that are unique to that line of business. So I can see the type of questions, I can see the queries, I can see what actions they take on those queries. I can generate reports, I can disseminate those reports to, again, the line of business stakeholders that Steve's talking about. So it's really using analytics and insights to educate and inform a lot of the different stakeholders around what are the questions within their kind of, maybe they're just responsible for a specific territory within that line of business. So maybe just they're responsible for Texas, again, versus California. And you can really start to show those unique questions that they're happening within their local communities for their specific business lines. It gets them closer to the customer, the types of questions they have. what's most important for them. And so that ultimately journey around, how do you start to move from a bank to really anticipating the goals, needs, dreams of your clients and being able to create these experiences. It's an educational process, and you can use technology to kind of inform a lot of that as you go.
Yeah, Shane,
And
if I can add something real quick on number three specifically, the further you get away from consumer, so I view it as consumer is the most common, consumer retail, then wealth, small business, and institutional. The further you get away from retail, the more surprised your business partners are going to be that you actually have data in regards to commercial and institutional. Both of the banks that we did this at, the business bankers had never seen any data related to online transactions, online activity, search results. They didn't think that people were even looking online for some of their products that they represent and some of the industries that they represent. So just putting together most commonly search terms that are happening within that specific tab of your website is a pretty big win for you as a digital marketer, but it can also be a pretty significant win for the business owner for that specific industry or for commercial or institutional. And I have many examples of senior leaders saying, I did not realize that C-level or people that represent C-level executives are looking online to try and find the best bank or best relationships. I mean, where else would you find that? I mean, not everybody can be out in the field, shaking hands and kissing babies. So there are many people that are looking for commercial services and institutional services online. And, you go to some of the top 5 banks and those experiences are really well thought. And they actually show bankers information on their website. So it's a competitive game, but there's a lot in it for not only the digital marketing manager, but also for the business partner that you'd be working with. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to send me a note on LinkedIn or send me your email and we can talk.
Yeah, so we're in the next few slides. We want to go into some of what are some of the headwinds that we're facing around personalization strategies. So headwinds being these things that we need to be thoughtful about that will cause change in our industry. And so, but as we do this, I just want to remind the audience, if you have questions, use the Q&A section. Go ahead and put those in there. We'll come back to it and after a few slides, and we'll be able to answer those questions. And it may be like, is there more information around a certain topic? And we have blogs and we have other resources that we can send to you. So definitely feel free to ask even those hard questions around regulations, et cetera, or technology questions. Even though that we're not going too deep on that for this session, I'm glad to answer any questions that you have. So here we start to talk about just things that you need to keep in mind, right? And so those things that you need to keep in mind is more data privacy is happening around customers. So a lot of these strategies that really require kind of knowing all of these attributes around an individual, like what is their favorite football team? How many kids do they have? Like, what is their wealth? And like, those are things that over time, it's going to be more complex. So you can have, so really that's why we're breaking down these use cases for things that are kind of not related to PII, that don't rely on cookies as we start to think about, the cookies going away because of a lot of these data privacy rules. There are, a lot of things happening right now with the SEC and, around leveraging AI and kind of implement, what that means to our industry. So, and the other thing that you're really hearing, why a lot of these, as Gardner has predicted, that these personalization strategies are failing, it's for a few reasons. One is people are trying to go to that one-on-one personalization when they don't really have a good control of their data. Maybe their systems really aren't talking to each other that well. Maybe it's hard to get a hold of IT, right? Maybe this technology is some of the personalization technologies and options out there, I'd argue not yet, but some of the other ones are a little bit difficult to implement. And so they might not have the right technology teams to be able to maintain these things. So there's, what we really recommend is point 3 is start simple, You don't need to have all of the answers figured out right away. It's kind of a test and learn approach. You can get these experiences on, live, and you start to see the types of questions and, the unique questions that you get for these local markets. For instance, maybe there for SMB, there's a big, like healthcare organization or military organization, or in some other areas that might be high tech or agriculture. Those are things that can really inform your strategy as you think about redesigning your web experience, your mobile app, and those other things. So, use this as something to kind of bring you closer to build analytics and inform a lot of those different decisions. Here we can start to see a little bit more around this as we start to think of, a lot of the data privacy is the right, you have to disclose what you're going to do with the information, how you're going to be, if you're going to be sharing it. You need to give people the ability to be forgotten. You can't discriminate against people who are opting out of these things. And there's more and more states that have signed regulations around this. There's more and more states that are having new litigation that's kind of underway. So just really, as you start to kind of like look at, the levels of complexity that you want to go in, is make sure you have a lot of different choices around those different personalization tactics and strategies that we've talked about. Steve, I know one of the things that kind of we've talked about in the past is it's not just the things I'm mentioning. It's, there are things in financial services organization called core banking platforms and LOS platforms that are very specific to the line of business. And those things aren't always as easy to, find resources and integrate for, or, kind of hijack that kind of IT backlog to get what you want from a digital marketing team. Maybe you can talk to us about some of the other considerations as far as deploying some of these personalization strategies that you would say, or what are some of the headwinds? What are some of these things that we need to kind of be thoughtful about and kind of use to inform our strategy?
Yeah, I would say that the most significant headwind has been risk and compliance, and
Right.
just making sure that nobody is scared about what we're doing, or at least if we are, we have some concerns that we have a mitigation strategy to protect the bank against some of the things that we're trying. But there is an opportunity out there to go in and push the envelope a bit. Culture is everything for a bank, and some cultures are going to be completely cautious about that, and maybe let 90% of the other banks go first. But that's probably the most significant headwind. Number two is promising something that you can't deliver. And that happens all the time, where somebody sees a product that they want to go purchase, they go buy it, and they're trying to implement it, and they've got this return that they've got to get back, and they've not even taken advantage yet of the on-site search or SEO basics and keywords, and they're not even sure what's happening and what the intent management. So I've seen kind of both ends of the spectrum on some of these concerns, but you have to just make sure that there's a process in place. You start with a strategy, you figure out what your strategy is going to be, what it's going to consist of, and I would say you're not going to you shouldn't sign up for any real results until you have put that strategy together, built your team, and hopefully you've got an expert in your organization that's done this somewhere else. Or you can partner with a third party like you guys, like Yext, or somebody else that can really kind of help put together a cohesive plan, kind of go-to-market plan. Then you start talking about, what are the successes? What is the return that we're looking for? But from a headwind perspective, it definitely is compliance, legal, and risk. Making sure that all of your I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and that you continue to learn. Just because you go to market with a specific strategy doesn't mean that it's set and done. That should be reevaluated often, and be able to, some of those results should be tweaked. Some of the processes should be tweaked as you go, and that's changing monthly. Sometimes it seems like it's changing daily or weekly with GDPR and some of the other things that we have to deal with. But yeah, don't let the headwinds slow you down too much, though.
Yeah, I think this kind of slide speaks to what are the kind of the digital foundation that you need to consider. Right. So one, we've talked about how do you set up the kind of for the semantic world, right? And so, as we start to think about AI and LLMs, right? So, GPT, OpenAI, et cetera, we are moving into this world of conversation. And so you can use search and you can use chat for kind of some of these stepping stones. But you should, build your foundation, you don't have to build out all of the different sections of your house, but you definitely should build a strong foundation that will allow you to build these things out in phases and stages as you start to build business alignment around that. And so using that kind of semantic foundation is really important, right? So I'll kind of like hit on that. Two, you don't have to like do the big bang. You can start to like deliver success incrementally, test and learn, leverage a lot of the analytics to educate different teams. You can have a hypothesis, you can test that hypothesis. One of the things Steve's always done very well is, the best way to get the line of business excited and to kind of work with compliance teams is to kind of develop an ROI around this. And this is something that Yext can help with, right? So we can help you build that ROI of, what's the kind of efficiency that you would be able to drive to your organization? As we start to execute on this blueprint for these capabilities that we're describing, what's the value of that to the organization for a revenue perspective, for a risk mitigation perspective? And then, that obviously speaks to compliance and that speaks to executive management when you can say, look, I'm confidently already delivered some of these things in the organization. I want to now, approach use case 3 and 4. And you don't have to buy all of the product in advance, right? So now with any kind of SaaS-based product, cloud-based product, you can start to turn on what you need as you go. And so you can build capacity as you go. You don't have to have it all at once. So you can really kind of I think have that strong ROI of kind of cost versus value that you deliver. You start to have a knowledge graph here of, how do I build that content, right? So we've also heard in AI that 70% of being able to manage, at least in the past AI, is getting a little bit easier with some of the newer models here. But at least in the past, a lot of it has been kind of, do I have the right content to answer these questions? Is that content formatted the right way to be able to be delivered to a mobile app, to, my authenticated online banking experience, my CMS out there, my DXP, and so my email platform. And now that data can really be structured in a way kind of to support these conversational experiences that we have, these chat experiences, these search experiences, these voice experiences, and these visual experiences very easily, and the technology's come a long way. Then you start to kind of think about some of the segmentation approach that you'll have around this too. So I know, Steve, as you've kind of like gone through this quite a bit, you've been a big advocate of just kind of that phase, like you implemented these search experiences pretty quick, right? You build some adoption around that. But you started a little bit small, and then you start to kind of expand, leveraging some of the analytics, and you let the analytics inform like where you want it to kind of focus on building out your knowledge graph. And I'd love to hear how did you get support for building more content? What kind of, did you use agencies? Did you, what kind of things did you do from those insights?
Yeah. And that's so important. Like we were talking about, is kind of building on those successes, incrementally growing that practice. But the answer to your question about agencies, yes, definitely. We had some really great agencies that helped with content. Not sure if I should share the names or not. I guess I can. But we used Skyward in the past. At 2 different banks I've used, Imagination, great content providers, great partners. They really came in and helped us to understand the performance of the content that was on the website. And then we would take a piece of content that really did well, and then we had multiple versions of that specific article written. And we could turn one article into about 5 to 10 different versions of that. And so then we looked at the performance of those pieces. But not all of the content was generated by partners. A lot of the content was generated internally. So I actually had built storefront teams at 2 different banks and hired content writers and content editors within my team at both banks. And then they would kind of turn into editors. So they would kind of take a look at the content that was being generated and make some tweaks, and also go internally to business bankers, some of our retail bankers, and use them and kind of do some ghostwritten articles using internal employee information. And there are several cases where we actually got that banker to be more on a national scale because they had such good content to share, and they started to get an audience because of the content was so relevant. But you don't have to solve everything at once at the beginning. You can definitely put that plan together. Put a goal to pay for whatever resources that you utilized. That's where you start, and then put some longer term goals on hitting certain ROI returns that would be good for the organization. Another thing is, when you start this, and if you haven't gone too deep in personalization yet, you can identify and start with the largest revenue generators for your credit union or for your bank. If you know that a certain area is driving X percent of the revenue, 20, 30, 60%, you can double down and really focus in on that specific line of business in those products or that industry. And then you can start and do some of your testing in those areas that are driving the majority of the revenue for your financial institution. And that's a really good way of showing the value of what you're doing, what your team is doing, but also showing the value of working together kind of, cross-functionally. So definitely multiple ways to do that. And I know we have limited time, but those are the things that you should really be focused on.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I really liked is, we were preparing for this, Steve talked about a few different things. So one is using the analytics to kind of look at the high volume questions that you have for these lines of business, and then really see how are users engaging with those answers. And maybe you need to add different call to actions, like a sign up now, or a little bit more description, or put some pictures on them. You didn't have to have those pictures right away. So you could start just getting some of the content out there. It's going to be better. Everything's going to be better than your experience today, right? That's the important thing to keep in mind. And then as you start to test that, you can optimize the visual representation, the types of content, the CTAs on there, and start to measure that lift. And wow, we're getting that 2 or 3x. Like, this is a significant business value that we're kind of achieving, and articulating that to the business. And again, especially for some of these types of questions, some of the questions, it's not about the volume, but it's around the value of answering that question. So always kind of look at, like, what are these high volume questions, and the analytics that we have will help that. You often have to say, how valuable is this to our organization? There are things where you can put attribution in our platform, and we'll add some of this up. And we have some metrics to kind of guide and help customers on that. And we can give those to you offline if you need some help, especially with building the ROI cases. But then too, what was really cool about this is not only using outside agencies, but you developed subject matter experts in, like, the line of business. Then you started to help, the agencies kind of help them ghostwrite some content based on these questions of value and volume that you're seeing. So I just thought that was like a very kind of multifaceted way of kind of approaching content, but using data to kind of inform your strategy, and then being able to articulate that value out to different teams.
Yeah, and really the data was everything, and the performance of the content really made a lot of the bankers believers in what we were doing online, because I would argue that the majority of commercial and kind of institutional bankers, weren't as keen on what we were trying to accomplish for them on their behalf online, because they didn't think it was as relevant. But once they started to see the data, the performance of those the web pages, and then when we created specific individual banker pages, and they were getting traffic specifically to them from some of these pages, they definitely were believers. So just don't forget your business partners. It's really important to pull them in early, and even if they don't quite understand it all, pull them in early and have them walk them through the process. But really depend on the data. The data has to be in their hands, and they've got to be able to touch it and make sure that they understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things I just remember that you did is you created like an industry insights for some of the institutional. That was like really widely consumed, like what's happening in these markets, what's happening for these specific verticals like dentists or high tech. Yeah. So I think being able to also have a way for them to easily access that without having to like go through this complex navigation. And just search for that and subscribe to these things too. So it's really,
and that was the same. We used the same, a very similar process at two different financial institutions, where we kind of built out the institutional and commercial experiences, and yeah, there was significant success there for sure. Definitely more than paid for what we were doing.
Great. So here we start to see, like I've talked about, like being able to understand intent. And so as you start to understand language, what's a good way to say it? You bridge the gap between the financial jargon that we use in our industry as bankers and financial professionals versus consumers, right? So again, that example of, saving for my kids' college education, very few people know it's a 529 plan until you've kind of gone through that journey. And the other thing is financial literacy and education. That's a big thing in our industry. And so how can we maybe even go after some of these more lower income territories? Again, that just, I even struggle with all my experience around financial services and insurance of keeping up with the jargon. It's even worse than consulting than I came from. And so here, the value of this is what we see is, technology now, specifically semantic technology, can really kind of help extract these things. So it knows Park City, Utah, right? It knows that's location intent. I don't have to enter a zip code. I could say Chelsea Quarter. I could say New York. I could describe location in any kind of way possible, and it will understand the context of that, extract that from the question, and use that to kind of inform a lot of these experiences. It could know based on the types of questions, the who, what, when, where, that's more top of funnel content, and start to kind of show a lot more educational material here. This information can, again, people are giving this to you, right? They're what's my credit score, or if I don't have good credit, like what are the kinds of loans that are available to me? Really being able to not just say here's a mortgage page and here's all our products listed on that, but like prioritizing the actual loans that are most applicable to them based on that question that they ask. If I have an excellent question, a credit score, and I say that, right, I could reprioritize those same search answers specifically for that context. And that's really the power, and why I'm kind of stressing this. Like, you got to build this semantic foundation. You got to build this into these experiences, whether it's web, certainly personalization, it's critical for, but just kind of some things to kind of factor in here. The other thing is we want to just kind of leave you with some of these experiences today. What does a modern baking experience look like? And, Yext is a platform. We're talking a lot today about search and personalization, but it can even help you manage a lot of these third-party experiences in Google and voice networks and your mobile app kind of things out there. And so it can kind of push a lot. You can change information in Yext, and it'll syndicate that information to all these different places that consumers are that they're asking these questions. We can pull analytics from those different places like Google and other into our platform. We can also, as they start to use the search and chat If they're using us for web pages, if we're connecting to a CMS for web pages, we can have a lot of things that we're storing about the customer journey to be able to inform some of these actions. And here, this kind of shows a traditional experience where, an individual still wants to talk to another individual, especially as we have these these more complex financial needs that involve more of our money, So based on this information, there are ratings and reviews out there that an individual might be able to see. We can kind of manage a lot of that. And all of these signals can be, signals around the information, signals around analytics of the types of questions people are having, signals around reviews that consumers leave that, Yext can help, get those high review ratings, and we can help present those reviews. Helps with SEO, it helps with search, it helps with the customer experience. So it's kind of, think of the modern financial services experience, and we integrate with a lot of the tech, the core banking platforms, the appointment bookings, these other kinds of things that you have in the back end to start that physical journey. But here, what it's really about is providing consumers choice. Some will like to just have that digital touch point. Maybe they don't even they want to be more self-directed and they don't really need the financial professional. Others, they want to go to a bank, they want to go to a branch, they want to visit an ATM, they want to talk to a person. And being able to support both of those is very important. We've learned a lot about that. Steve, I don't know if you have any kind of thoughts around this, but you've used all of the products, right? Not just search.
Yeah.
You've used our listings products, our reviews, our pages, our analytics, our data connectors.
Yeah. I think it was crawl, walk, run though for me and my team at we've used Yext at multiple banks that I've been at, and it's telling that story. It's building the foundation the right way. Even if you're not in a position to go out and utilize a service yet, at least leverage your data that you're getting and start to tell that story internally. When you can start to put that data together, show the success or some of the challenges, most likely it's going to be challenges that you're having, telling the story to customers and prospects, then you need some help, right? And that's where you can engage Yext. But it really is a process, and it's not an overnight success. It takes some time to build up, the right search terms, the right on-site search terms, help you win in SEO, and then it takes time to really understand what's potentially going to drive the most revenue and the most success for your institution. So we were fortunate to take advantage of just about all of the different products and services that Yext offered. Saw a significant amount of success with all of the different aspects of what we were doing. But the main thing is we continued to progress and optimize even when we were having success. So we never thought we were done. And to this day, I know that the teams are still pushing, updating content, updating their charts and graphs, and fully taking advantage of all of the different services that Yext offers. So yeah, it's an exciting thing to do, and it's hard to stand out in today's world because everybody seems to be doing just about the same thing across a lot of financial services. We sell commodity products in financial services, but you can stand out by having improved experiences, better experiences than others. And Yext is definitely a platform that allows you to stand out from everybody else.
Great. So here, it's almost, we should start calling it like a continuous innovation platform or something. Maybe there's like some cooler way for us to kind of really get across some of the value of the platform of incremental kind of testing and learning and innovation. So I wanted to show some best-in-class examples. We're glad to set up time with you and walk through a lot of industry examples of large banks, insurance companies, wealth companies, credit unions, regionals. We've got them all. So 450 financial services clients around the globe are on Yext. We do a lot more than just financial services. So we obviously 4,000 plus clients as we start to look at some of our other industries that we're powering a lot of these experiences for. But here, what's really cool about this is you can see that Google-like experience over on the left, where if I have location intent, I see the maps and around finding that financial professional. If I have credit card, I can prioritize what credit cards are most important to be able to show up here. I thought we would save kind of a few minutes just to go over any kind of question and answers. So maybe Julie, if there are any kind of questions that we should hit. And then lastly here, we can kind of see there's some great resources out on the Yext website, yext.com. Please feel free to go there and, or reach out to Steve and myself. And again, this presentation that we'll be presenting, everybody can access that. You can work with the host to get access to the presentation that we have too. So.
Yeah, excuse me. Thanks, guys. That was really informative. I was taking a lot of notes furiously. We have about 5 minutes left, so we have time for about one question. And you guys touched on this a little bit. This one says, with the rapid evolution of AI and machine learning, how do you envision personalization strategies in financial services evolving over the next couple of years? So looking ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things that Yext is able to do is you can take a lot of these large LLMs and Yext has a lot of the information stored around the specific products and the specific way that you want to answer a lot of these questions. And that's really important in a financial services setting. So you don't want AI being able to answer a lot of these questions, especially without a person kind of overviewing that, having the supervision and the controls function that are very critical for our industry. So Yext brings that foundation. You can kind of think of it as a platform that we're able to bring. We have all the things to adhere to a lot of the regulatory compliance. So we do things like archiving, we have workflows in our system, but we can tie in, we can be model independent, and some of the models will change over time. What we think is the cool model now will not necessarily be the cool model tomorrow, or there'll be ones that'll be better value for that. So you want to prevent the kind of model lock-in, as we like to call it, and Yext can help with that. And then we have a lot of this infrastructure around these models so that you can kind of tie into that and leverage a lot of whether it's OpenAI or Llama or some of these other models out there to help you with a variety of use cases. And some of these use cases is content generation. Content generation is a hot topic right now. So we can think about not only using kind of the subject matter experts in the firm that Steve talked about, agencies, but obviously using a lot of these LLM models to actually create content and inform some of the questions, but still having the workflows and the archiving and all these things that are really important to financial services. And given that we have so many financial services clients, that's something that's live in the product today. We'd love to demo to you. So
it looks like Andrew's got a question too, Shane, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, we have about 3 minutes left, so maybe keep it pretty brief.
Sure. All right. How well does Yext scale? What about sub 1 billion asset banks? Yeah. So we go all the way from SMB to what we call commercial, which is kind of where a lot of the credit unions fit, to the regionals, to the biggest banks out there in the world. And so we kind of have an offering around that. So.
Great. All right. Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Again, you can connect with Shane and Steve on LinkedIn. Check out Yext's website. Also, as we mentioned before, the presentation is available to download in the related assets window, so you can check it out there. If you have any feedback on today's sessions or recommendations for future webinars, please complete our survey at the end of this webinar. It'll pop up on your screen in a few minutes. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Shane and Steve, and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.